Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the SuperMarketers podcast, where high-level marketers level up with AI and AI experts. Today, we have Derek Iwasiuk, who is the co-owner and co-founder of SearchTides, a AI search agency. Derek, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
So we did have the pleasure of working together. So I got to see a peek into your brain, how you operate, how you actually help these brands increase their visibility in answer engines. And I thought it'd be great to bring you onto the show to share a little bit about your
Yeah.
process, because you are really data-driven, process-driven. So first, maybe if we could start with an overview of what you do at SearchTides and the types of companies that you work with.
At SearchTides, we are mostly focusing on like the overall holistic marketing, but targeting SEO and AEO or any AI visibility, right? And my role specifically is I run the kitchen. I run most of the operations in terms of strategy and coming up with the tactics and trying to stay up to date on what actually works. So I'm the one in the still in the basement running tests and doing stuff like that. But it's what I like to do.
Yeah, and you kind of
And the kind of sorry, yeah, and the types of clients we have kind of all over. We're one of the I don't which ones do we have on the website? We could say so. We have like FanDuel is like one of those clients. We have some ones like Credit Ninjas, which is interest credit card payments and stuff like that, or loans and insurance companies and stuff like that. So all over the place, but usually sticks towards the financial side. So
Okay, awesome. One of the things that I really like about what you're doing at SearchTides is that you have a very specific process, and you call it the AI Search Undercurrent, a reference to SearchTides, but
yeah,
it's process driven and it's very thorough, ties in a little bit of the qualitative part and then of course the quantitative part. But can you walk through what the components are of that, and then how somebody could replicate that on their own site or brand to increase their visibility?
yeah. So our AI undercurrents, it's basically 5 layers, we call it. And the first layer or the first 2 layers are basically like the language and identity layers. We try to understand what the company is, what they say they are, and how they actually fit into the marketplace. That's very important. And I think we started going this route because a lot of companies are just, they don't have unique identifiers, or they're not actually, there's no reason for them to exist, honestly, say, compared to what stands out between them and 5 competitors. So we help them work their stuff from like taglines and mission statements, visions, even their product line, to trying to help differentiate them from their competitors, right? You'd be surprised how many taglines I've rewritten and stuff like that, just so they can be notable and different. And then the language layer continues into, okay, how is actually the third party people like Reddit and conversations about you and the brand and the general ecosphere of conversation, does that actually align with the things that you say you are? So you might say you have the top quality customer service, but what's the reality of that in the people are saying about it? You say your hats, for example, are the highest quality. Is that backed up by customers and stuff like that? So we do a lot of like sentiment analysis around all their product lines and stuff like that. And then like our third layer is, we call it, it's like the distribution layer, right? So the distribution layer is basically, you can have your layer 1 and layer 2 align perfectly. Like you say you're the best at this, whatever, and everyone else says you're the best at this, but is it actually distributed among the basically the worldwide web? But are you getting into editorial articles? Are you making top listicles? Do you have coverage in Wikipedia and all this stuff like this? So that it's more of the power side of things, right? Where more traditional SEO in the day was just focusing on just power, right? So we think a distribution is a little bit more of targeting specific subsets of features that you're missing, or you need to fill that gap. And it goes back, what has really excited me about this is more of like, I got into SEO almost like 18 years ago, and I wasn't doing like building tactics like we were doing like even a few years ago, which is just like everything was about now, or was just get a link, and it was an arms race for who got more links and more content out there versus who's actually talking about you and marketing about you, and the messaging is lost. I find we're finding that LLM marketing is a lot more old school. So it's not necessarily the link is valuable, but more the context of that article, the way the attributes are getting pulled out, the features are getting recommended, and if it's getting repeated and stuff like that, right? So the distribution is basically us doing like more PR type work than just link building and stuff, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have two other layers, which is one is a data layer, and then the last one is trust layer. So the data layer is more of it's like the language layer, but it's more structured data, right? We think of sites like Wikipedia, Crunchbase, anything that's an entity built where LLMs and Google and stuff like that. It's just like a structured data set of interconnected web properties that define your entity, right? And properly like that. So that's a little bit more modern SEO kind of stuff like that, right? Like defining, building entities, your knowledge graph, stuff like that is very helpful in there. And then the last layer is, we call it the trust layer, which is, so we build a lot of this stuff up and it needs to be repeatable. And basically, when we go test these LMs over and over again, we want that it needs to be in cement that it stays that way and it's reliable and it's good. You need to make a company that's 1 year old feel like it's 10 years old, because it's just like you're building up their reputation and stuff like that. So it's just the trust layer, getting the even reviews and all that stuff out. That makes sense.
Yeah. What I hear is that you start with understanding, like at the core, the essence, what is your positioning, and ensuring that it is founded in
Yeah,
reality. Anybody can say that they are the best financial service planner, whatever, but it needs to be validated by third-party sites. And then also in a way that is unique. I've heard you use the term semantic distancing, so that things are actually different and that they're
yeah,
rooted in reality. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because I think you use a lot of this, is how you are tracking prompts, or how you are tracking like the impact of what you're doing. And then
yeah.
in this nascent industry of visibility and prompt tracking, there's a lot that's like unknown, but you seem to have it dialed in terms of like how you're taking this strategy and then acting on it and tracking the metrics.
Yeah. Yeah, we use a tool called Profound for the most part, anything that's automated, but we also do it manually with just like spreadsheets and APIs for one-offs. But the difference with Profound is it's using the actual dashboard to get this data versus the API. There's been some studies out there, or results people have been publishing, that there's a very big difference between what the API produces for ChatGPT versus logging into the dashboard, right? To get the best consistency in these answers is to use the dashboard, right? Even then, we know that if 15 different users do the same prompt in ChatGPT, they're probably going to get 15 similar different answers. So for us, it's more about quantity and just data points over time that we can actually develop some kind of consistency there. And what we generally do is we track with Profound, like if we're in this agency plan, so people can come directly to us and they don't have to go through Profound. But um, we track about 500 prompts, and with the way we do it with the LM or the AI visibility audit Undercurrent is we'll set up a lot of the distribution type prompts, which will be that most of the companies are interested, right? So it's the best credit card for 2025, whatever, like that, 26. And then that's like a non-branded kind of prompt. And it's very using superlative language, right? So it's what most people, like in affiliate world, most people are interested in the top or best type variations of keywords, right? So we'll track a bunch of those things around all the different products that they have or are interested in, and any topic that's related to them. But then we also track a lot of the sentiment stuff and about the brand. So when we're talking about our first two layers, we're actually looking at how much the LMs understand the brand, right? So does it know the founders? Does it know the location? Does it know the ICPs of the actual customer? Does it actually know the tagline, the mission statement? Does it use information from the about page? And what we want to do is, if there's any questions about the brand that are getting cited mostly from other people's sites, that maybe it's controversy, or it's not your brand narrative, right? What you want to do is we want to make sure that the website takes care of anything that's brand related, right? And that's even what you used to do a couple of years ago still works. We just search a brand and start pulling up the people also ask questions around your brand or similar competitors, right? And that develops into FAQs on the website, developing the about page properly and stuff. And one of the big things that we kind of work on is making sure that there's one sentence on the website that's on the footer, not necessarily. Sometimes we use just like a div tag, whatever like that. But it's just, can you describe your business in one short sentence? And we use that same thing like semantic distancing, which is basically if we take we just run a script, and it'll measure the entities being used in, say, like your tagline or your mission statement or whatever. We'll compare that to competitors, and we want to actually see that we're semantically a little different than the competitors, and that's where you can get an edge, right? And usually that means that, say, for example, we're working with a company that does CD, like certified deposit interest checks and stuff like that. But it's an American thing. But they're in Canada, we use like GICs basically, right? But they weren't semantically different more than, say, like Nerd Wallet or whatever, those kind of companies. And like one of the things that they were missing was like, no, they only work with like these verified rates. They have the largest marketplace. They're basically, we semantically make them different than their competitors. And LLMs and Google, they pick up on those differentiators, right? So especially if you start looking at listicles in the prompt answers, usually you'll see that the way that they pick out the competitors, they'll return like six, seven, eight brands for a certain query you're looking for. And every single one of those usually has something that's different about them. Like they're not usually just, oh, A, brand two, brand three, whatever like that. It's usually brand A is best for this situation, brand B is best for this situation, right? And so people can get a little bit more, they could choose to go which direction, right? Because they're looking for a specific connection between them and what the brand they're looking for. For this one we're talking about is they have the largest amount of available rates, and they also had the most actual highest rates, and they also didn't have advertiser influence. So that's the big thing with like NerdWall. It's like it's all pay to play, right? So all these affiliate lists, they're all influenced by money, right? So
One thing I want to dig into is you're talking about, and let's use this example, like best credit cards for 2026. One
yeah,
thing that Profound has in terms of features that I think is really good, I think the AirOps has something similar, but is the query fan out feature, where you can take that one query, and I think it's based on what Google released with AI mode, where best credit card 2026 would actually be under the hood multiple questions. So it might be best credit card for couples, for points, for whatever, small business. So that there are multiple angles from this. And so this might appear, and then people also ask, but how do you actually use this and address this and then use it to inform what content you're doing or the positioning or some of the digital
yeah.
PR that you're doing?
Yeah, like the fan out queries in ChatGPT, they're very easy to manually get to. It's like there's a bunch of tutorials out there. You can just basically view the source of the page, and you go to your network browser or whatever, and you can extract them. But the whole idea is that's what ChatGPT is using to perform searches to find your answers. And the best insights are just like looking at those things and developing patterns behind those, and then you can figure out, okay, I don't need to look at the fan out queries for every single one of these. You look at a few thousand of them, you're going to start seeing patterns. But they are very important because that's the keyword optimization of traditional SEO, which is we're trying to apply for when ChatGPT is selecting article from Bing, or they use Google as a backup, basically. But to get a citation, you still have to have SEO frameworks to rank, right? So you still need to be in the top 20, 30 results to even be considered for a lot of these answers. And the difference between SEO or pure SEO and like Google searches and LM is the distribution of the rankings. Like number one doesn't matter as much as it used to, right? So you can be position 12. It's going to select based off of the nuance of the things that they're looking for, right? So that's why title tags and descriptions matter a lot. And using the fan out queries is going to help you usually if you have 15, 20 fan out queries, because you watch these prompts time, right? So we're not optimizing for one prompt one day. We're looking at the prompt. What's the differences between we've been running the same prompt for 25 days now, and we have a list of all these different fan out queries and how often they're used, right? So we can isolate down, and then we can make more of a traditional ranking system that we would use for Google, right? And it would now we can publish it, and we know how to address like the basic. This is still SEO stuff, so we use that as kind of like a beacon for ranking, but we're still obviously we need to be topic focused and still writing an article that's basically semantically independent sentences and stuff like that, right? So we're addressing prompts. We answer those things with a sentence or so that like when I say semantically independent, it means it works separately from without the article, and it answers a specific question, right? And it gets to the point. There's no fluff, right? And that's why fan out queries are pretty important. Even Perplexity, they have them, but I don't. Profound doesn't have them built into the tool yet. But Perplexity, you can go in there, and it actually tells you this is what we searched.
Yeah. Now,
But
you've mentioned Perplexity, you've mentioned ChatGPT, Google AI mode.
yeah,
Does your strategy change depending on which LLM you're targeting? And does it matter based on the goal or your client type? For example, financial services versus direct to consumer versus
yeah.
SaaS. How does that change? How does strategies and tactics change for different platforms?
Right now, just because of the traffic, it's not really that viable enough to say we have to target all of them, right? We pretty much stick to just Google-based systems and ChatGPT. Grok, I don't know, we get hardly, even on the busiest site that we have, they might get 3 visitors a day or something like that, right? But a lot of it's going to be the same situation anyways, right? So they might choose the different citations, but it's like the way we're approaching it is you got to just cover all your bases in terms of content, right? Cover your bases in distribution. All the LMs are going to have their better choices of certain things, but it's we haven't been able to isolate. We're only doing better in ChatGPT, and we're not doing better in Google. So it's always been more holistic in terms of all that, right? They all have the same function and abilities, right? And anything that's Google based is going to be the most important, especially going forward, because you're going to get direct traffic right now. AI overviews it's already there. People are switching to the AI mode already, and Perplexity uses Google's results all the time and stuff. So that's how we usually do it. And in terms of just different types of clients and stuff like that, we don't really have a different strategy except I think there is a little bit YMYL kind of scenario that might be going on there. And
Yep, your
so
money, your life.
the reason, yeah, exactly. So it's just like that. And for us, it's more about future proofing. So the things that work today, like listicles, for example, like they worked really good not even a few weeks ago. And that's already that if people don't know, people are self-publishing these listicles, right? And saying they put themselves on the number one of the list, right? And then then it works perfectly. It just worked like gangbusters for everything, right? And you can put yourself number one for 80 different attributes you're trying to target, right? And the listicles still work, but now they're just promoting your partner, your competition. So everyone I've been looking at so far, it's like you put yourself in number one, you're not even on the list anymore. So that's interesting. It still works in meta AI, but I don't think anyone cares about that. But
So you're talking about distribution as, I guess, the last step in the undercurrent. What can an
yeah,
individual, so say it's the founder of the CD company or financial services, what can an individual do to increase their likelihood of visibility, to drive their own PR outside of link building efforts? So, for example, have you seen that LinkedIn, Reddit, putting YouTube videos
yeah,
up? Does that matter? Or reiterating the specific phrasing of the brand, so the repetition and consistency that matters. I'd be curious to know on an individual level what somebody can do to impact their
yeah.
visibility.
Yeah, I think the still like the strongest ones out there is like the free stuff. Like anything YouTube related is it's still I think the number one cited. YouTube is number one cited, or Reddit too. So they're all close together right now. But publishing and just being in, if you have a small brand and there's questions in Reddit about certain things and you're an expert on it, I guarantee you put 5 to 10 minutes a day in that, yeah, you're gonna blow up pretty quick there. is still very powerful. Like even just starting a new post is probably like the best thing you can do there. But and you can even just state yourself as like an expert in something, ask me anything or whatever like that. You don't have to be spammy about it. So those are the things. LinkedIn, Pulse, all those things. People get cited within 20 minutes sometimes with the Pulse article and stuff. So that's really helpful. Other people, the thing that's working really right now is cheap press releases even. So that's
Mm.
something $80. You can cite your company, start publishing stuff like that. The listicles in the press releases and stuff that I think are getting harder to get done. But I've seen what's worked really well for our clients is just like independent research and then do a press release on top of that. So if you had if you did a study about saying that the fastest transaction time, blah blah blah, like then you have the actual proof, and then you do a study press release on it. Then you have this. You can actually claim this superlative that you're the best with this thing, right? The LMs love it. So those are the cheaper things to do for sure, and also anything local, right? You're just optimizing your business profile and your LM citations type stuff like that, right? Making sure that if you update your citations, you use your clear, we call it canonical language. So we help brands define canonical statements about their brand, right? So what's your one-liner, your tagline, your one paragraph that is very semantically different than everyone else that talks about you, like your elevator pitch, kind of like that. And then use those things with consistency across your citations, your Facebook profiles, your Instagram, and stuff like that. And then all that kind of meshes together, and it clears a lot of the confusion and hallucinations and any other possible issue with LM. So it's really my free tips.
Yeah, great answer. So last question wrapping up is your recommendations for marketers, for SEOs, for AEOs. It's impossible to know what's going to happen a year ago or in a year.
Yeah.
It's even like Opus 4.6 or Codex 5.3. Things are changing so quickly. But what might you recommend in terms of going to where the puck is going, or getting to where the puck is going, or preparing for this new world? Where might you recommend somebody diving in, sharpening their skills, and kind of building?
Yeah, there's a lot of good websites, but I generally stay away from like the mainstream stuff. But I love Stephen Toff's AI, or basically whatever you want to call it now. His notebook on just AI visibility methods and stuff like that. It's just a free newsletter. That's the one I follow. Mary Haynes, she does a really good stuff on AI visibility. And then the rest of us is mostly just like getting out there and building stuff and playing with it, right? Like we hire a lot of people and all they do is a lot of times they just have generic information from that you can find on any blog or site, whatever like that. But I'm like, okay, what have you actually built? Or what have you, actually built something? What have you tested? What kind of results? Just like anything when you're a little, like I was a little kid and I would take apart the vacuum cleaner and I couldn't put it back together, so I wanted to see how it worked, right? I took all the belts out and everything like that. Break some stuff. That's what I generally do. And I think that's the best advice still. So maybe watch some of this security on if you're going to use the bots and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
keep your reports closed and
for
whatever.
sure. Yeah, OpenClaw or Claude Code are great places
Yeah.
to start.
Code.
Yeah,
Claude
thanks so
Cowork.
much.
Yeah.
This was a
Awesome.
fantastic conversation. I really appreciate the insights and ideas. Best place to connect with you or find you online?
Yeah, just Google SearchTides or Derek Iwasiuk. So it's the best way. You can connect with me on Instagram, and I think it's just my name. But I like those branded searches, so you got to do those things.
Yeah. Fantastic. Derek, thanks so much.